In the Indian system, in these lush forest regions, you're surrounded by nature, the cacophony of insects and birds, and um, it's just the sheer force of the natural environment that keeps these elemental deities, these gods of rain and thunder and the sun and light and the earth and the ground and the soil and fertility, and keeps them elemental and natural and potent. And so people are still drawn into uh, those nature gods and goddesses for their inspiration. And yeah, so like one of the songs from the Vedas that is still so well loved today is Om Bhurvasvaha Tat Saviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. It's so beautiful, so short, but it's an invocation or a love song to Savitu, the god of the sun, of light, of dawn. Eventually, the as it always happens, these classical settled civilizations, they have a cycle, and after their glorious golden age comes the decline and the degeneration, and then the collapse. So the leader, the alpha male, the king at the top of the earthly hierarchy eventually becomes this self-aggrandized, self-glorifying egomaniac, so obsessed with the cult of his own personality, and gathering treasures and having all the pleasures and having as many wives and concubines and children, and building these elaborate mansions and tombs and everything to glorify himself, and so he becomes the antithesis of what that position requires, and so the people suffer under him. He's a tyrant, and under that tyranny there's chaos, and there's poverty, and there's warfare, and there's just a general decline in the quality of life. But at the same time, the religious body, under the pharaoh or the emperor or the Shah or the whoever he is. So under this god king, there's his priestly caste, who are the ones who officiate over all the ceremonies and the whole religiosity of it all. And in time, that becomes a very mechanical function. They actually become a tool or an arm of this corrupt, tyrannical king, and so all the beauty, all the spirit, all the love is kind of sucked out from that body of priests, and it just becomes this mechanical thing. People are trained to speak the words, like they're supposed to be some kind of magical incantations, and so they're just going through the motions of it all, and so that Vedic system, as it happens in every place, every civilization, eventually collapses. And so the way it's depicted in the Indian mind, in the Indian mythology, in the Indian spirit, it's just brilliant, right? So we know that Indra is the king of the gods at the top of that hierarchy, and he's the one who slew the dragon Vritra, and so now one day Indra is walking along on his mighty elephant, and he comes across this humble sage, Durvasa. And so Durvasa has a garland, and he wants to bless Indra, but the elephant stomps on the garland, and Indra is kind of haughty and arrogant to the sage, and so the sage decides to teach him a lesson to discipline. And so he puts Indra and all the gods in this struggle with all the devils and demons. So the gods and goddesses are pulling on the tail of this serpent, this mighty, huge cosmic serpent, and the devils and demons are pulling on the head. And so as they pull this way and that way and this way and that way, and the snake is coiled around this mythic Mount Meru. And so the way you churn milk into butter or cream, similarly the gods and devils are churning this cosmic ocean and liberating the elixir of life, or the ambrosia of immortality. And at the same time, all these lower creatures and animals and uh, demonic beings are being lifted into higher angelic beings. And that's such a if a picture tells 1,000 words, then this myth tells 1,000 symbolic pictures. And so that whole Vedic system is represented as an old man with long grey beard, and he holds in his hands the Vedas, and so he represents that Vedic system. But if you look to the temples and the mandirs and the home shrines and that, you won't find Brahma. He's more of a relic. He's more of a representation of something of bygone times. When you get to the Upanishads, they are much more philosophical and much more meaningful, and that's because they are more rooted in this original spiritual system of the Dravidians, of the teacher and the student sitting together in nature, sitting under a tree, sitting beside the river or in the forest, and there's this transmission from guru to devotee. And it's not just a transmission of knowledge and ideas and wisdom, it's more especially a transmission of state of consciousness, of beingness, and so often it's just about sitting together in silent contemplation. After generations and generations of this, this body of knowledge emerges about this process of looking within. There was Shiva or Rudra in the Vedas, but he's more like deprecated and ridiculed as this like uncouth wild god of the forest, dressed in animal skins and dirty and with long netty dreads and all of that. But then after the fall of the Vedic system, Shiva comes to the fore. This mercurial character, this very interesting god sitting in silent contemplation of what? And so there are a few different representations of Shiva. There's the Shivling, which is this phallic symbol. There's this annual festival in Grand Bassin where there's this huge volcanic crater lake, and there's the annual festival of Shiva. People from around the island walk all the way to get there, and it's the middle of the night, and there's thousands and thousands of people, and there's this huge temple with this huge Shivling that's like 2 stories high, and you go around and ring the bells, and you get to the top eventually, and then you make your offering and you pour it over this phallic symbol. Even when seated in silent meditation, he carries the drum, and that's because he is the lord of the dance. Yet another form of his that harks back to his shamanic tribal origins. Every culture has their own god image, and it shapes their qualities and it shapes their aspirations. They're striving towards a certain ideal, towards a certain goal. So it's different in each culture.